Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Zoro is going to steal Rocksteady Xebec's sword. And on top of everything we already know, it was confirmed in chapter 1155 that Xebec was a legendary swordsman. And when I say legendary, I mean the kind of level where even his haki would overflow into the environment, just like what happened with Roger and Whitebeard. So if this guy was really that skilled with a sword, his blade didn't just vanish into thin air. And if it still exists, well, you already know who's most likely to get their hands on it, right? That's where Zoro comes in. Let's talk about how this sword might have survived, why it hasn't shown up until now, and how Zoro could end up claiming it for himself. And if that actually happens, it could be the final step for him to reach the top of the world, the place he's been aiming for all along. So let's dive in, because this is just the beginning. Ever since we learned more about Rocksteady Xebec, a lot of things have started to make more sense. And when chapter 1155 revealed that he was an insane level swordsman, a bunch of light bulbs went off. Because think about it, if this guy was as strong as they say, and if his sword style made haki pour out like Roger and Whitebeard's, there's no way he was using just any ordinary sword, right? I believe he had a legendary blade, maybe even one of the 12 supreme grade swords. And more than that, maybe a sword with a will of its own, one of those with a soul that drains the user's energy, just like Enma. Maybe even more dangerous than Enma, but unlike Enma, which was passed down through generations until it ended up with Zoro, Xebec's sword disappeared. It was hidden. No one's ever mentioned it, like it was erased from history. And that actually makes sense because even Xebec's name was nearly wiped from history because of what he did. The Navy, the world government, they all joined forces to erase him from the map, and that included everything connected to him. But what if his sword was left behind? Where is it now? Maybe hidden, maybe sealed away somewhere. But if it still exists, it's bound to return, and the one destined to find it is probably Zoro. Remember how Zoro got Enma? He wasn't even looking for it. The sword basically came to him. It was a trade, an opportunity. What if that happens again? What if Xebec's sword also chooses Zoro? Now here's something interesting. In chapter 1155, we see that Xebec was an Elbaf. And guess where the Straw Hats are headed now? Coincidence? I don't think so. I believe the sword is there. It could even be that the giants themselves hid it. Or maybe Shanks knows where it is and left it there, so no one else could use it. Because let's face it, Shanks is deeply connected to all of this. He knows who Xebec was. He knows what that sword represents. And if there's one person Shanks might allow to wield that sword, it's Zoro, especially if Luffy's around. Because let's be real, the only kind of person who can handle a sword like that is someone with insane willpower. And we already know Zoro tamed Enma, so maybe during their journey in Elbaf, they'll come across some kind of crypt, a temple, or a relic left from the time Xebec was there. Maybe a sword embedded in stone, sealed by haki, hidden away so it would never be used again. And maybe no one's ever been able to pull it out because the sword didn't want to be wielded. But Zoro, he'll just touch it, and that's it. The sword will recognize his haki, or maybe his spirit. Maybe it even senses something from the Shimatsuki bloodline, and suddenly what was impossible for everyone else becomes second nature for Zoro. Picture the scene. Zoro draws the sword, and instantly the sky darkens, the wind shifts, the ground cracks beneath him. Because it's not just any sword, it's like Enma's more aggressive sister. It doesn't just suck out your haki, it demands to be fed with a thirst for battle. Maybe that's even why Xebec was so violent. The sword amplified his desires. And now, it's going to test Zoro. And that brings up another point. Zoro uses 3 swords. If he gets Xebec's sword, which one does he give up? The Wado Ichimonji? No way, that's Kuina's sword. The one that represents his dream. The Sandai Kitetsu, maybe, but that one's cursed, with a personality of its own. Enma, maybe this new sword is the next level above Enma. Or maybe he keeps all 3 and learns to rotate in a 4th. Imagine if Zoro develops a 4-sword style. 1 in his mouth, 2 in his hands, and 1 strapped to his back for finishing blows. I'm not saying he'll turn into an octopus, but we all know Oda loves pushing the limits of what's possible. Now, you might ask, why is this sword only showing up now? Easy, because the world is falling apart. The world government is losing power. Secrets are coming to light. Imu is pulling strings, but the chaos is creating space for truths from the past to resurface. And Xebec's past is going to be exposed, not just through words, but through relics. And his sword is one of those relics. One more thing, what if this sword doesn't just have power, but memories? You know that idea that a sword remembers its battles? What if by wielding it, Zoro has visions? Like he's witnessing the battles of the past. Moments like Roger fighting Xebec or Garp clashing with him. That could reveal more of the world's past without anyone having to experience explain it. The sword shows it. And maybe that's why Zoro gets even quieter after getting the sword. What if it starts showing him things the world isn't ready to know? Or what if it starts to influence him, pushing him toward an even stronger thirst for combat than he already has? Then comes the big question. Will Zoro be able to master the sword? Or will he be mastered by it? But one thing I'm sure of, if Zoro is ever going to face Mihawk for real, he'll need the most brutal sword that's ever existed. Because Mihawk's not going to hold back, and if Zoro wants to fight him on equal terms, he's going to need everything he's got. This sword could be the missing piece, a symbol that he's not just the greatest swordsman alive, but the heir to the legends. Not because he copies their styles, but because he has the strength and spirit to carry what no one else ever could. If there's one thing One Piece has always made clear, it's that swords have personalities. They choose their wielders, like we saw with Enma. Even the Sandai Kitetsu had that eerie, cursed aura, and Zoro could feel it back at the sword shop in the East Blue. So if Xebec really did have a legendary sword, and that's not hard to believe, then that blade isn't just some object. It's practically alive. And swords on that level don't just vanish. They wait. What if this sword has been waiting for someone like Zoro, a swordsman who doesn't fight for fame, fortune, or destruction, but for honor, for a promise, and for personal growth? That might sound like the complete opposite of who Xebec was. And that could be exactly why the sword sees in Zoro a chance to have a different purpose. Now think about this. That sword was wielded by a man who nearly became king of the world. Xebec stood against Roger, Garp, and anyone else in his way. And he didn't do it just with a powerful crew. He had a sword that could amplify his desires, his thirst for control, his domination. If it's true that swords absorb part of the soul of those who wield them, then this blade is full of memories, full of grudges, and heavy with darkness, like a beast chained up waiting to be unleashed. And then Zoro shows up, not with arrogance, but with the respect he's always shown swords. He never tried to force Enma to obey him. He listened to it. He let it draw out his haki, but also learned to control the flow. He understood it, and maybe that's exactly the kind of bond this new sword has been waiting years to find. There's another important detail. If Xebec's sword still exists and is really that powerful, then it's probably one of the 12 supreme grade swords. And Zoro doesn't have one yet. The Wado Ichimonji is one of the 21 great grade swords. So is Enma. Sandai Kitetsu ranks even lower, so maybe it's finally time for Zoro to step up to the next level. And not just for status, because if he's going to face Mihawk, who wields Yoru, one of the 12 supreme grade swords, then he'll need a weapon of equal caliber. Otherwise, no matter how good his technique is, it'll be an uneven match. I believe Oda intentionally held back from giving Zoro a supreme grade sword until now. And with the final saga underway, the world in total chaos, and the crew arriving in Elbaf, everything points to this being the moment. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.